GG.
Hi everyone, this is Chris Manson from the Gallus Geeks, and today I'm going to be reviewing issue 1 of a newly released title from IDW called Saucer State. It was released on Wednesday of this week, and it's a successor series to a Vertigo published series called Saucer Country, and it's an alien abduction conspiracy flavoured political thriller. And I've got to tell you, I'm quite excited about this. The reason that I picked it up was I saw it being advertised by Travelling Man Manchester, which used to be my old local comic shop when I was living down there. And I saw this grey alien peering out at me from my screen and immediately felt chills. And I thought, you know what? This is going to be a series worth investing my time in. And I'm happy to report that that is the case. So it's written and illustrated by the same team that did Saucer Country. So we have Paul Cornell writing the story, Ryan Kelly doing line art and inking, Adam Guzowski on colours, and Simon Boland doing the lettering. And I've picked out every single one of the credited creative team for very good reasons. The whole thing is put together with a kind of well-observed creepiness. Like I said, I got chills the minute I saw this grey peering out at me. And the reason for this is that as a child, I kind of got creeped out by them. I had a genuine fear of these grey aliens. And as I grew older, I sort of pushed myself to kind of face this fear by watching UFO documentaries. And to this day, I still love watching the old documentaries from the UFO craze in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And when I saw this I was kind of transported back to being a kid and feeling that little twinge of terror, and immediately knew that these guys have done their research. They've done their watching of these old programs, and they know what it's like, because this isn't just an illustration of a grey. This looks like it would not be out of place in one of these old-fashioned documentaries. One of the things I particularly enjoy is that, like I said, it's not merely an illustration of a grey. It's got a lot of detail to it, and it looks insanely sinister with those kind of dark, dead eyes. And, you know, greys, they're featureless creatures, really, and that's one of their main kind of selling points. But Kelly's really outdone himself in the amount of variance that he introduces into the greys' features for such a featureless race. I mean, compare the alien on the cover to this alien leader here, to this alien peering in the window, which, by the way, is an incredibly well-observed shot. For reasons that will become clear as you kind of watch through the story, we see a lot of these familiar scenes from movies, from TV series, and this shot here. And I'm not going to show you much more of this because I really do want you to go out and purchase this. But this shot here, we've seen it a few times before, whether from fiction or from documentaries, and there's a good reason for that. But it's really nice to see this replicated so well in the comic format, and to see such variance in the appearance of the greys, because it helps give them a little bit more character and makes them feel like they actually might be an alien race rather than just kind of inserted props as part of the story. And the artwork is incredibly good at doing this kind of integration of artwork and story. Not only do we get the really creepy, very well observed shots from kind of popular culture's idea of what an alien abduction looks like, there are other instances of incredible weirdness that occur throughout the comic that are just so well illustrated. My favourite parts being There's a kind of acid trip, like LSD style experience for a couple of panels, sort of halfway through the comic. And this is rendered with just such glee, such kind of almost Alice in Wonderland, Ghibli-esque delight, with grinning suns, Totoro-like creatures inhabiting a bright and wonderful landscape. There are callbacks to Saucer Country, where a specific entity is rendered in a style not unlike the kind of ray gun gothic of the 50s. And this entity is not simply drawn like every other character, but is actually kind of painted in like one of the old pulp style cover girls, which is really nice to see. And there's another bunch of entities yet still that are drawn kind of like 1960s, 70s comic style adventure, sci-fi adventure comics. And it's weird. It looks out of place intentionally. It contrasts with the sort of mundane appearance of the normal human characters exceptionally well. Because not only is the story telling you this weirdness going on, you're seeing it yourself, and it's manifesting as a different art style. And this works. This really works, because it makes your brain stop for a second to try and comprehend what's going on, kind of like the characters are doing, which, like I said, integration of art and story is really, really, truly well done here. And this doesn't stop at the line art as well. The colouring in this book really needs to be lauded. One particular feature that I quite like is, if we to this page here, you'll see the alien abduction pages, discounting the fact that it's night, they're illustrated in a kind of greenish, bluish tint. And this holds out for whenever they're discussing the aliens or in a sort of conspiratorial setting. It makes it feel a bit cold, clinical, military, and again brings us back to the sort of tropes that we're used to. And it's not done for cliche, it's not done for laziness, it's done specifically to remind us of the stories that we've already been told. And I've probably been overly serious about this, but there's very good story reasons as to why we're being shown things that we've already kind of seen in other fiction. That's all I'm going to say about that. You'll need to figure out that for yourself. The reality sequences are all done in a much warmer palette, and it becomes the comics sort of normal palette, and we get used to seeing this as the kind of baseline. We know that things aren't going to go too wrong here, and it sets an expectation for us, the readers. The fantasy sequence that I mentioned earlier is, of course, decorated in the most saturated colours I think Guzowski could find. And special mention to the 60s, 70s style adventure sci-fi comic entities. They're done in these really odd pastel colours that I can't quite place where I've seen them before, but given what these entities actually are, it's very fitting and it works really well. But also kind of contrast from the bold colours you would normally expect from such a style of illustration. So again, just a fantastic job. And last but not least, lettering, spot on. I mean, look at this kind of 60s typewriter typeface that Boland has chosen here. Again, it's playing back into the conspiracies of yesteryear. It calls to mind the Android 12 documents. It really fits in with the feel of the story overall. But also, it's not overused. This is the only place that the typeface is used. Elsewhere is more modern comic style typefaces. And again, when specific entities show up, they're given their own subtly different but still easy to read typefaces to indicate, again, there's weirdness going on, there's different things going on, there are unreal things happening. And I really think that the art team and the writer just really worked so closely together to achieve this tight-knit effect. And it's wonderful to see this in a comic, and just kind of raises the production values immensely. Now, of course, we're here for the story. As brilliant as the art is, we want to be told a story. And this issue really is kind of about establishing facts. We're being introduced or reintroduced to characters from Saucer Country. We're finding out both their personalities and what they've been up to since the end of Saucer Country. Basically, we're being set a baseline for the rest of this story to kind of kick off from. And it kicks off. The final page really does just kind of boot you in the arse and tells you, all right, you've had your fill of information. You've got everything you need to know. Here's some story. Buy the next issue. And it does it. It's almost like the old-fashioned kind of Marvel style final panel. Just off screen, something appears, and every character turns around and screams, "You!" And you have to buy the next issue to figure out the cliffhanger. Except in this case, you're shown what everyone's looking at, and it's just so impactful that it makes you want to find out what's going on, because it disrupts so many of the assumptions you've already made, which is great. I love that. I've got to say, Cornell, I think, probably reads and watches as many conspiracy theories as I do. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a tinfoil hat wearing mentalist most of the time. But, you know, as a kid, I used to just thrive on these stories because they're urban fairy tales, let's face it. They're the kind of grim stories of our time. I've always found a fascination in them. And Cornell, I think, just has a love of the conspiracy theory as a sort of storytelling mechanism. Because there's so many references in here. Naturally, you've got the alien abductions in here as one of the main aspects. But you've also got elements like, if not governmental collusion, then certainly some sort of human organizational collusion with the aliens, perhaps. You've got elements of the infamous MK Ultra program. And tied in with that, you've got references to classic LSD experimentation and trials, and the machine elves that come along with them. There's just so much in there. And it works. It feels to me like, and I'm going to use the words here, organized confusion. There's a lot of information to take in at this early stage, and there's a lot of maybes, could be's, possiblies. But it's managed very well, and they're kind of cleaved off into their own silos of mystery, but you never feel like you fully know what's going on. And that's not because the writer is concealing things from you. It is because things, forces, powers within the story are concealing information from the characters, from the general public. It feels like, you know, fear, uncertainty, and doubt really does have a root in the universe that Saucer State takes place in. And this is reflected onto you. There's very little dramatic irony here. You really don't know all that much more than the characters do. You may know one thing that a certain set of characters knows that another set of characters don't, but beyond that, you're kind of left to your own devices to figure out what's going on yourself, which is great. And, you know, naturally, the series is going to get compared to the X-Files, right? It's, to me, certainly the kind of gold standard of episodic science fiction, conspiracy, horror, thriller type stories. But if you watch the most recent series, the mini-series that came out, you'll know that they're trying to steer the story into the realms of, well, there never were any aliens. It was all a human conspiracy using the images of aliens in the first place. Now, I'm still not sure whether or not that's happening due to the uncertain nature of all the different conspiracies that are lining up in this story. But Saucer State is doing that kind of story so much better than the X-Files is, which it's a huge thing for me in particular to say as a huge X-Files fan. But it feels like Saucer State and Cornell has been planning this for quite some time, and has been seeding it throughout Saucer Country, and is carrying it over into Saucer State. It feels like he's earned it, and there's more meat, there's more kind of story intent behind this as well, and it works so much better because we feel that uncertainty. It's not just a sudden decision that's been made. This kind of puzzling thing has been built up over time, and like I said, has been well earned. So, to summarise, Saucer State is a story in which the writing and the art really work very closely together to bring you what I think is going to be an excellent conspiracy story. It takes a lot of existing tropes, it takes a lot of existing things that we're familiar with from the media depiction of various conspiracy theories, and is doing something different with them. So it feels really contemporary, even though it has its roots in the old conspiracy theories and urban legends of the 50s, the 60s, the 90s and the 2000s. And I really think it's a mystery that's going to be well worth investing in, because, like I said, that final panel really does just give you a shove and goes, right, you've had your lot, let's get on with the story I want to tell. Now this, I believe, is a 6-issue miniseries, I'll be looking forward to completing my collection of that. If you want to catch up on Saucer Country beforehand, Cornell himself says you don't need to have read Saucer Country beforehand, and having read this issue without reading Saucer Country, I can testify to that. I'm pretty much clued up on what's going on, but I'd like to read Saucer Country. I think there's a couple of volumes that's already been released by Vertigo. You could always pick up the loose copies if you go down to your local comic shop and ask very nicely. Or if you want to wait a little bit, there is a TPB coming out from IDW Publishing later on this year. I'm a TPB fan, so I'm going to be waiting for that, I think. But yeah, it's definitely worth a look in, especially if you enjoy conspiracy theories, if you like kind of old-fashioned thrillers where you're not sure entirely what's going on until the resolution. And if you're an X-Files fan, this is right up your alley. I will quite happily recommend it on the basis of that. Although I'm probably sure that the creative team is probably sick of X-Files comparisons. But you know, if it gets you reading it, if it gets you buying it and supporting the creative team, so be it. So, this concludes my review for Saucer State, released this week from IDW Publishing. I've been Chris Manson from the Gallus Geeks, and I'll catch you all later. Cheerio! GG.